Hey Void, ever feel overwhelmed staring at your first draft? Or any draft, really? You've spent hours pouring into this, and now looking at the finished product, you're thinking, where do I even begin? Me too. So, in this video, I'm sharing with you 3 systems you can use while reading your current draft to greatly improve your next one. Why? Because drafting is hard, and I want it to be as easy as possible, which means if I don't plan it out, I will scream. I hope you benefit from it. We will start with the color coding method for those of us who are not note takers. The median system is a little bit more in depth, and then the third system has a lot of note taking. I know some people don't take any notes when they read their draft, so it's totally up to you what serves you. A little bit of brief housekeeping. You haven't seen me in a while because I moved. This is the library. This is not my office. I'm not sure what our permanent setup is going to be like, but this is one of them. Following this video, I'm going to make several others while I read my draft one and try to take notes. I'm not sure which system I'm going to use, but as I go through the process and I take thousands of notes or no notes, maybe I make a new system altogether, I will update you here and I will share whatever I learned to hopefully make your process even easier. Before we get started with system 1, if you want to read along with me, there will be a document linked below. You can download it for free. It's just all the stuff I'm going to say, but you can read it. Assuming you have your manuscript printed, which I highly recommend, because then you get to hold all those words in your hand and it's super motivating, but also because then when you edit, you'll have something physical to kind of look at and go back and forth, work between the two. If you have 2 monitors, it's kind of the same thing, but I like to hold my work in my hand. If you don't though, you can just use your writing software to highlight the pieces. These are the colors that my brain chose for these categories. You're welcome to listen to your own brain and change them. Yellow will be parts to completely delete. Alternately, you could do grammar, but that is really going to be for later on in your drafting process, like maybe towards the end when you're getting ready to start querying or professional editing if you're self-publishing. I would not focus on grammar at all until I was way further down and I wasn't going to need any rewrites. If it bothers you greatly, you could put it in yellow though. Just saying, you could put it in yellow if it really bothers you. Now, blue are for areas with unclear ideas or when a character is acting out of character or their emotional response isn't good, anything that you want to fix. Green is for strong sections that don't need changing or that you would like to build on to make a scene better. Red will be for parts that require major rewrites, but you understand what you were trying to do and you agree with the tone or the idea of the work. You can highlight every sentence or just use brackets or lines on the side. I'll put some examples here of what I mean when I say that because you might not want a lot of color saturating your pages. Or maybe you want a lot of color because you have markers that don't bleed through or you're using gel pens or whatever the case. Feel free to do it however you'd like. This will create a visual roadmap that will give you highly targeted edits without overwhelming note taking while actually reading your work. On to system 2, note cards. Everybody loves note cards. This system focuses on story arc, pacing, and the clarity of individual scenes or chapters. Depending on how your manuscript is broken up, you might have a note card for every scene or a note card for every chapter. That also might just be how in-depth you want to be or how easily it is for you to spot these different scenes within a singular chapter. Absolutely your choice. Either way, each chapter or scene will get its own note card. On the front, you'll write a quick summary of the chapter or scene. You want to use as little sentences as possible. This is checking for narrative strength. Can you follow what's happening enough to be able to regurgitate it in a little bit amount? A lot of problems are going to come out this way, which is a good thing because you can fix it now that you know that it's there. On the back, you want to flag sections that the pacing feels off, transitions are unclear, or characters act inconsistently, or the plot doesn't make sense. You can use as much description or as little as you can fit or want to fit on that note card. This approach helps the story move more smoothly from one scene or chapter to the next. By summarizing, you can maintain the narrative focus and avoid leaving bloated sections that will drag your draft down. One of the biggest advantages of this system and why I'm considering using it for my own is that you can very quickly go back and add things to scenes. For example, if I'm on chapter 23 and I get an idea that my character finds a puppy, I might want to, in chapter 4, mention that she's always wanted a pet. So I can go back to my note card for chapter 4 and put in mention that she's always wanted a pet in some way or another. Or I can flip through and find a scene where that could become organic. Maybe they're at, a farmer's market and there's a litter of puppies there. Whatever the case, it makes it very easy to reference. And you can have them all laid out in front of you on the floor, maybe like that, and you can physically rearrange them if things are not working well. If you're a person who works like me, you might do this for every scene, where then you can add other scenes in between, even if these are just a few words, so that you can, kind of hop along your story and see if it's working. This will give you a clear bird's eye view and definitely strengthen that next draft. For the third system, I call it one page, one chapter, and it's definitely the most in depth. You'll need a notebook and your draft, either printed or not printed. And if you ask me, you should leave a few pages for the table of contents at the front so that you can write down what pages everything is on so you can quickly reference it. That's totally me though, don't have to. Either way, you'll go to a page, you'll put your first chapter, and you'll divide that up into 5 sections. Now, you could do like 5 equal sections across the page. That's not how I like to do mine. I'll show you right here so that you can follow along on an example with me. I've split mine up with the summary being the full page at the top, 2 boxes in the middle, and 2 boxes at the bottom, the middle left one being slightly smaller. Why? Because it makes sense in here. But you can do it however you want. So we're going to do like we did with the note card system. We're going to summarize the chapter in as few sentences as we can to check for that narrative flow, that cohesion, that we can follow the story. We do not want our readers to be confused, so we can't be confused. Once again, you'll catch any glaring plot issues that you need to fix. If you get stuck, ask yourself these questions. What happens in this chapter? How does it move the story forward? In the next section, the middle left, you'll list the characters and their key motivations or goals. This keeps you focused on consistency. Characters should always be acting with purpose and have agency unless they purposely do not, and you are in control of that, so make it purposeful. Once again, these rules are there for you to bend. Please subvert my expectations in books. That's totally fine. These are just to help you out, so everything is intentional. Ask yourself these questions. Who is present and what do they want? Does anyone's goal shift during this chapter? The third section, the middle right on my example, is for the emotional beats and tones. Write down the emotional tone of the chapter, perhaps where the protagonist starts and how they end the chapter. You want there to always be movement in the emotions of your characters. Are there moments of tension, humor, or relief? Tracking emotional shifts ensures your pacing feels right and isn't boring. You don't want your character crying in every single scene. Or maybe you do. And if so, then you can see that you're doing it. A few questions to ask yourself are, what are the primary emotions or mood? Are there significant emotional changes either for the protagonist or the side characters? The fourth section, bottom left on my example, will be for issues you know you need to fix. This could be plot holes, chunky dialogue, white room syndrome, or maybe a place where you know a scene needs to go before or after to round out the chapter. This bottom section becomes your to-do list for the next draft. Ask yourself, is anything unclear or unnecessary? Do any character actions or plot points feel forced? And did I drop a thread or can I strengthen any here? I would not bother writing any grammar issues in the early drafts once again because rewrites are going to happen a lot. Now, further on and you're confident about the rewriting, you can always jot down huge mistakes that you know you need to fix. That way they don't get left in your final version. The final section, bottom right, will be left open intentionally for inspiration or ideas that come later on while reading your draft. Maybe you need to go back and foreshadow something in this chapter, so you write it down. Or a line of dialogue comes to you, so you go write it down, you know you want it there. Or you know a scene needs to go before it. All of this can go here. Alternatively, you could use this space to track issues that you know you have problems with in your writing, such as dialogue, internal narrative, or white room syndrome. Using white room syndrome as an example because that's something I personally struggle with since I'm so focused on the internal narrative that I often forget to provide any external stimulation. Let's say in the chapter your characters are in a cafe, but you didn't write anything about the cafe. It's actually just all dialogue. Well, in this spot, you could write down what comes to you. The color of the chairs, the way the tables are shaped, the way the windows are shaped, the way it smells. Anything you can think of, you can put here. This will give you a huge boost when you go to revise. It will trigger that creativity to start flowing. I truly think the blank page is the biggest enemy to most of us. And the only way to conquer that is with inspiration. And you are perfectly capable of inspiring yourself. While in depth, once you've done this for every chapter, you'll have a quick one-page guide for all of your revisions. No second guessing or flipping through pages and pages of notes. Just open your notebook and drafting program and get started. You've already done the work. That's all the ideas I have to share for now, but before we go, I want to remind you a message that I think all creatives need to hear. This process isn't going to look the same for everybody. You might find that you take no notes while you read your draft because you want to experience it like a reader would, or you might annotate it while you read it like a reader would. Depends on the type of reader you are. And you cannot hold yourself to anybody's standards or anybody's timelines other than what works for you. Every day you create art in this tension-filled world is a success, and I'm thankful for it. Take it bite by bite. If you have any ideas or tips or videos related to this topic, please post it down below. All together, we can find something that might work for everyone. Don't forget the Google document is down below, so you can reference that whenever you'd like, and you don't have to listen to me yabber. Is that a word? We're leaving it in. I wish you all the creativity in the world. You can do it. Find me nearly anywhere but Twitter at Hail Mary if you want to chat. And until then, see you, Void.